it's one of those things that was always under my nose my whole life, and it wasn't until I actually had a camera stolen from me in Paris that I realized how much making images and documenting my life and my travels and my time in nature and whatnot, I never realized how much it meant to me until that ability was taken away. So
漂浮木的那个形态和它的纹理都很漂亮，但是很多时候可能一般的人，很多人在走的时候他没有留意到，但是我就觉得这给我很大的一个启发。我想我能不能做一个主题去表现这个漂浮。
You start. Okay. The series you see here is probably the closest collaboration we've done so far.
In some of my work, and it's not so obvious, is that there's a certain aging process. Other work that's in the show was left out for processing on plates in the sun at a time when there was an unexpected snowstorm, and then it got cold, and the work froze to the table, and I wasn't too worried about an extra day of exposure. On the third day, I was like, let's find the kettle. And
then it became like a real collaboration, because how do we now take what we've created? So both of us had to sit down and figure out it was frozen in ice.
Yeah.
So now how do we get the photo out of this?
And then my inspiration is, it comes from a number of things, but fundamentally I would say that it always seems to stem from my passion and connection with nature. So earlier in my career, pretty much all of my bodies of work were traditional captures of landscapes that I felt really connected to and that I resonated with. And over the past 8 years, it's evolved into creating artworks that advocate for those environments that I initially connected with. So generally I'm speaking about environmentalism in the compositions that I create, and that all seems to stem from that initial passion for spending time and appreciating the beauty of nature.
我想我是在2012年开始，因为我跟我的朋友有时在河边走的时候，发现那个河边很多这种漂浮木头。那我觉得我很喜欢木头的，其实我自己也喜欢做木工人，所以我对木头特别有一种不同的感觉。这样，我是想这样，因为我觉得漂浮木它像一个好像人的生命一样，就它是从我拍了这一个主题以后，我就出了一本摄影集。摄影集呢，就是在这个名字叫不朽 impermanence 那个就是说，就是把漂浮木的整个它的经历作为好像是一个生命的一个乐章一样。
For me, my journey began when I was really young. I had a grandmother, and she used to belong to a photography club. And when I was little, I actually spent a lot of time with both of my grandmothers growing up. But with my one nanny, she and I used to go for walks in nature all the time. And because she was a photographer, she was constantly taking pictures, and she gave me a little tiny camera to play with when we were out on our little excursions. And by the time I was 4, I asked her where my pictures were, because I finally realized that I had a toy camera and I wasn't ever getting pictures back like my grandma was. And so she actually started loading my camera with film at 4 years old. And of course I bombed through the rule right away. And then she kind of, she kind of explained to me, you have to just wait until you see something special and then you take a picture. You only have so many chances to take a picture on one roll. So I think that practice, for me at a really young age, was really special because it made me take the time to slow down and to appreciate nature and to explore what really connected me as an individual to anything specific that I felt that I needed to go and explore.
I think that we tend to decide things are spent or gone well before they actually are. And we kind of tend to concentrate on a highlight in a life cycle and say, oh, that's where the beauty is, and forget that it's a continuum that keeps going round and round. And that probably all of it has its own inherent beauty that we just forget to look at.
Here.
My work is starts with going to someplace in nature, or going to someplace and observing something that's natural, and looking for something that if I take it, it won't disturb what I saw. So a leaf that's fallen, or plants that are being pruned and pruned, but I'm looking usually for something that I see when I'm out, and it's my way of looking more closely at the environment. I'm co-creating with nature, but I'm also trying to remember my connection with where I was. So the pieces that are behind me used to, I was walking through Finn Slough, and although ginkgo isn't indigenous to Finn Slough, somehow some ginkgo leaves found their way to the ground, and then the horsetails grow there on the side of the riverbank. So in some ways, this is my memory of Finn Slough, and as I'm working, I start to go more deeply like a poet. I'm starting to look for the poem in the visual composition that I make behind that as I'm working, because I work very slowly. And I come back to my work, and these go through two steps. I put the material on a very large sheet of sheet film, the way you would run it through an old film camera. And then once I process this, I put it through a digital process. And in that work time, I start to think about it or do more research until I discover the meaning. So I don't start with a meaning, I don't start with a composition, I start with an experience. Look again. Walking by it a second time might bring out some more information.
我可以讲一下这个我拍摄这个主题呢，我是用了一个比较特别的技巧去做，因为一般照片风景照片都是拍一张的，但是后来又发展了一些新的技巧和技术，那就是说可以一张照片可以我用一个我的照相机不是非常专业的那种，可以用一种比较普通的照相机，但是我拍同样我一个风景，我分成几十块、几十个或者方格去拍，拍完我然后再用电脑把它之前就是说把它再组合起来，把它的连接起来。那么它的我要表现的它的可以表现更多的纹理、清晰度，或者它那个影像的尺寸更加大，可以做到这样一个。其实我以前我没有经历过在菲林时代，因为我比较年轻的时候我是喜欢摄影，那个因为我是可以说是爱好者，摄影爱好者，但是我从来都没有很就是不是一个专业的摄影师的啊。但我是从2012年开始，这个主题开始我就开始转到黑白。我觉得黑白比彩色更有一种比较强大的力量，因为黑白它不是用色彩就是不是用色彩来表达，它是用层次用灰度去表达的。我还有我就除了这个主题以外，就是我还有两个主题，一个是那个叫芬兰渔村，是 Finslow， 就也是在我在 Richmond 这一边的，是一个 有100年历史的小渔村，这拍过，这也是出了一本书啊。另外我还拍了一个是一个叫做龟口，这个作品呢，就是在当上一个 gallery 做个展览。这龟口是一个在台湾的一个地方，它是在海边，我是拍到了岩石。但是因为我很喜欢大自然的里面的线条，那些什么色块啊，那些就是这样的东西。那么我就用了这个龟口这个岩石，我拍成一个比较抽象的一个摄影，做了一个这样的一个主题。
The series that I have on exhibit for this show is my climate change series. So the landscapes are liquefying and melting, and my whole purpose of creating these high aesthetic artworks is to try to entice the viewer to come in, to kind of explore and get curious about, what is the artist doing and why are there these streaking lines, and then to kind of, if they are intrigued, to perhaps read the narrative and learn a little bit more and see that kind of depth and that contrast of a very aesthetic, accessible piece that's laced with a very important message. And I believe that for me as an artist, it's been the number one inspiration since I allowed myself to be really authentic to making the artwork that I want to make, is to try to create work that provokes deeper thought, that allows people to subjectively contemplate what might resonate with them, and then in turn also guide people through the written narratives that I like to exhibit with my works about what it is in my heart that I'm trying to express and why I make the work I make. But in general, my work needs to connect people with their own kinship to the natural world.
I think that photography is going to be kind of multimodal in a way. I see a lot of people working with digital enhancements or manually collaging. So I think it's going to become quite a diverse thing.
I'm really excited to be living in a time and creating during a time where the medium of digital photography is just, the possibilities are endless, and it just seems that the technology is constantly evolving, and there's so many people that are really in tune with photography now. It's a huge part of culture, and people communicate visually now. I think it's really exciting. There's great potential, and I mean, as an artist in this time, I feel like I'm really loving the technological evolution that I'm seeing. I just started shooting with Hasselblad, and I feel like to see even just the evolution of megapixels in a camera, what I can do in turn when I'm digitally manipulating individual pixels, it gives me so much more area to play with, and it allows me to print in larger scale, and it's a really exciting time to be a creative with photography. For me individually, and I can't speak to everyone else's practice, but I believe it's a privilege and it's an honor to be someone who creates as a full-time living. And for me, that really, there's a few things that are really important to me in my practice and in my career. First of all, and I learned this, it took me a while to figure out where my place was as a creative, but I feel like being really authentic to your heart, I think is really important as an artist. And I think it allows you to go to a place where you create your best work, and it's work that will resonate with someone else's heart. And at the end of the day, I think that that's what the world needs. The world needs people to be connecting in ways that transcends computer screens and transcends language, and it just basically hits heart to heart. So I believe that artists do have that capability, they do have that power, and if they allow themselves to be authentic to themselves and their passions or their concerns or what have you, I feel that it really does foster your best work, and it allows you to connect with community, to connect with other people that you may not normally connect with. And the people that I've attracted through my work have been immensely inspiring, people that are engaged in phenomenal science and advocation, and just in ways that are just beyond my mind. And so to be able to have those kinds of conversations and engage in dialogue about responsibility, because you do hold the power to create visual messaging. And I think that there are a lot of causes in the world that do need more attention. And again, this is just me specifically, but I feel as an individual, my loudest voice is a visual one. And so that's something that really hugely inspires me, and it makes me motivated to try to create works that speak to issues that I feel need to be talked about. And it kind of transcended my work from just really like traditional approaches to something that is more unique, and it definitely has a deeper message.
因为从科技来讲，这个 digital 这方面它的变化是可以，就给我们的空间是更大。因为如果是我们用非零的话，当然它可能会有某一些的特质，它自己本身的特质。但是 digital 我觉得对于艺术家的创作，我觉得给予它的空间更大，宽容度更多。
I think the artist is an intermediary, kind of avant-garde, if you will. I kind of think of culture as something that's always in transition, whereas custom is something that's always fixed. And no matter where you come from, you try to hang on to your customs, but your culture is always moving. So I think that the artist is the person that takes a look at that movement and tries to interpret where we might be going, or give ideas about how things can be merged and changed. I think that's sort of the role of an artist, really. When I was 2, my mother was an abstract painter, and she had a difficult time with me because I would never want to stay in the little crib thing that you put down. So she finally solved the problem by putting her easel and her paints inside the crib and me outside the crib. So all that to say, at a very early age, I was exposed to oil painting and composing abstract compositions, and I think that had a big influence.
I keep my eye on some of the other photographers who are experimenting with alternative processes in photography, because I haven't used a camera in any of my work. The scanner is technically a camera, but I haven't set it up as a shot, but I'm very interested in what people are doing with materials, and I wait for these little things to come through the newsletters that I subscribe to, and things. So I'm really out looking for people who are pushing the boundaries between printmaking, photography, and I have to add poetry, because I think there's a poetic element to, and the reason I say that is because contemporary or modern poetry is about spare language, like very few words and maximum possibilities for what those words mean. So I'm always on the lookout for that kind of expression.
其实我拍这个是我第一个拍摄黑白的第一个主题。我其实当时我是没有想到太多的，我也没有想到后来会有展览其他事情或者出版这样的。但是我觉得，如果是当我们做了些作品以后，我觉得可以用我的作品去影响一些人，是吧？让他或者在美学方面或者在某些思想方面，可能他会可以就是有更多的启发。
I started focusing on art probably at university, and I took a historical techniques course, which, as most people who've done art know, is fascinating, because you go from frescoes through temperas, through oil, you go through the whole sequence, and you have to learn how to grind your own paints and mix your own pigments in with mediums. So that was quite an interesting process for me. And somewhere in there I picked up photography as well. But for the first little while, I concentrated on etching. I found that really fascinating. And then after that, I moved into watercolor. And what I liked about watercolor was it's kind of a controlled careen, if you will. It's a medium where you can't quite control it all, not as much as you can in other ones. So you have to kind of go with some of the fluidity that's coming up. And I really quite enjoyed that.
I think a lot of boundaries are being broken. I think that trying to define what a photograph is, what a painting is, what a print is, what a poem is, what a song is, dance is, I think all of these boundaries are being shifted and dissolved. And I think that we're in Canada, I think, is a country very interested in preserving its culture through art, and so it's shifting, and we're shapeshifters, and we're moving into letting the artists lead us into what shape this country might be. And I think that, like I said, artists is intuitional, and it's also a problem-solving process. So by making something visual or even ephemeral, like a dance or a song, that will take us somewhere.
And then from there, I began to realize that photography or photographic processes were no longer really photographs, because a traditional photograph was something that I went into the darkroom with, and you put them through baths, and you had a projector and whatnot. So you were printing on a photographic sensitive surface, whereas what's going on now kind of surprised me, because you're printing on often rag paper. You're using pigment inks. So this isn't dissimilar to what was going on with printmaking, because in printmaking you're doing rag paper and you're using pigment inks. So I thought, oh, this is interesting, because that means that the way in which we can recreate things is significantly different in terms of what color you could get now. It's going to have a broader range of color. If you're in the dark room, you're only really working with 3 filters, whereas with pigments, you've got a lot more colors.